I'm really feeling the eat the rich sentiment lately. Like when you hear there's worse things than dying from people who want their employees back at work. And then you think of that quote from Tony Robbins talking about the challenges in life, saying that it's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness. And when you hear that apparently Hollywood people are getting easier access to testing, which they can afford, by the way, and many people in the world who are being charged for these tests can't, and they're getting their results quicker. And when you hear sentiments to the tune of poverty is a consequence of a character flaw, it really makes me wonder what these people's priorities are. It really makes me wonder why these people feel at liberty to dispense existence so arbitrarily. Right now, rich people are running amok. They're kicking off and they're telling us what we should all be worried about. They're moral grandstanding, and then they're saying that poor people should take one for the team. We've got to talk about this. Hello and welcome back. My name is Andy Fellows and I make videos on destructive cults, damaging norms and just generally bad ideas. And if you enjoy the video that you're about to watch today and you want to see more videos like it, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell thing to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Let's talk about a damaging norm. We define success around how much money a person has. And we say a person is worth a lot if they have a lot of money. And we hear successful people defending their money and looking down on people who don't have as much. Now, personally, I think kindness is worth more than snooty selfishness, but I digress. It's a strange and chaotic state of affairs, this rich-poor divide, this canyon that popular folklore has it. If you try hard enough, you can leap across. I mean, chaos is a ladder, right? There's this idea that it's all about mindset, and that's one that I used to share, but it's a facile answer to an undefined problem, which differs from one struggling person to the next. I used to think it was all about mindset. I used to believe in the law of attraction, which is this idea that your mind creates your reality. Literally, your mind and the thoughts you have are capable of creating and manipulating events in your reality by virtue of their power alone. So I thought that homeless people were homeless because of their vibration, which is easy for me to say, right? I used to think that a homeless person could get themselves out of any situation they were in with elbow grease and a can-do attitude. I once had a conversation with a homeless person that I'll never forget. I was walking home from a shop near where I used to live, and there's this homeless guy there, and he says, "Have you got any change?" Which is, normal. It's a normal kind of thing that a homeless person would say. And as he's talking, he's kind of swaying drunkenly. You can see in his eyes, he's not sober, right? So I acted out the expected charade of like feeling the outsides of my pockets for change that I knew was there but wasn't going to give him. Any other day I probably would have just walked on, but I was in a particularly spiritual mood that day. Not spiritual enough to give him change. I mean, who do you think I am, right? But spiritual enough to stand there and talk to him, as if my presence is God's gift. The sheer whiteness of that statement it's astounding. So I asked him what he wanted the money for, and he said, "My sister's left, she's in London." So I said, "All right, well, how much is a train ticket to London?" Kind of expecting that he wanted the money, and in a kind of expecting the noblest intent kind of a way, like just saying, "How much is a train ticket to London?" Assuming that was what he wanted. And he's like, "Oh, I can't go to London." So I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "My sister's in Leeds." So I was like, "Well, how much is a train ticket to Leeds?" And he, instead of replying, kind of feigned falling over in a way that was more suited to like pantomime maybe than the dusty and dirty path outside of a cash and carry. And as I didn't really respond. And as he kind of stood up, I just kept eye contact. He looked a little bit embarrassed about that. It was very much sort of shoddily acted kind of falling over thing. So I asked again, I said, "How much is a train ticket to Leeds?" And he's like, "Well, I can't go to Leeds." And I said, "All right, where's your sister then? Where can you go? Where is your sister?" And he kind of just looked up a bit as if looking for another place name that he could give me, and just went, "She's in Manchester." So I took some change out of my pocket, gave it to him. I just said, "Buy yourself a beer, mate." and walked off. Now, there is an argument for that bloke's predicament being purely mindset or like a character deficit, but I think any argument made from that standpoint, or at least any argument I can think of made from that standpoint, is kind of overlooking the heart of the issue. And I feel like it's a safe, easy thing to believe that it's his fault that he's there in some obvious, avoidable way, you know? So maybe there might be some people who are in that position who it is their fault and they are there for some obvious, avoidable reason, but I don't think that's going to be everyone, and I don't even think that's going to be most people that are in that situation. Not when you consider the variables anyway. I mean, this man didn't want to go and see his sister. He wanted a pound coin, and he probably wanted it so he could buy a beer. He stank of beer. Like, I could taste the beer on his breath. He probably didn't even have a sister, for all I know, right? How did he get to a point in his life where he's on the street asking someone who is at least half of his age for change, for whatever he wanted that for? That's a story only he can tell us. And if he stayed on the streets, it's possible he's not around to tell us that story today. Now, I'm not one to quote Gandhi. Like, I don't want to be that kind of a pretentious twat, but I am on YouTube on a soapbox already, so I guess we'll make an exception just for today, right? The true value of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable people rings true here. Now, I've heard and seen and like spoken with and felt a disdain for homeless people in my life. Like, not because I hated them or like I wanted bad for them, because I don't really want that for anyone, but like I wanted better for them, and it made me angry to see them, because the thinking was, come on, gotta do something, you know. Like, I believed that they were there not because of a complex and unique set of circumstances that aren't all entirely within their control, but because they just didn't try hard enough. And I could be wrong, but I get a sense that the myth that all you got to do is try harder is a myth that is perpetuated by people who had it good in the first place, or like had an easy start. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously there are going to be people who didn't and overcame the odds and so on and so forth, but there's so many different kinds of people in the world, and everyone has their own lives and like unique circumstances. For to expect that it's going to just be as easy as, well, just try hard for everybody is, it just misses the point a little bit. And the thing with the term mindset is I feel like it implies immediacy, like a sense of agency, like a feeling of personal control and a mind over matter attitude. And I think mindset could be some part of these problems for people, but I don't think it's as simple as that. There's more to what a person thinks and feels and can entertain as being possible than how they're thinking in the moment. A person's upbringing can affect what they can even comprehend as being possible, right? A family's income, for example, can determine a person's day-to-day level of safety, their access to education, and the nature of the social stigma that they experience, and also the severity of the social stigma that they experience. Adverse or worse childhood experiences that a person has zero control over, and in many cases can't get adequate treatment for, can profoundly alter a person's brain. So profoundly that it can make it harder for a person to relax, for them to sleep, for them to communicate their emotions and trust people, and to perform tasks that the average person might think are simple and easy. And that's not to mention disorders, conditions, disabilities that are both visible and invisible from the outside. Nor is it to mention the struggles of addiction, which is also not a character flaw, thank you very much. Nor is it to mention war vets. The staggering number of war vets that are both homeless and suffering from the aforementioned consequences of trauma, from mildly all the way to severely. Imagine a homeless person that's dealing with even a few of those things, and we wonder how they got there. But some people deal with the same things and they don't end up homeless. Everyone has different lives. Two people who are dealing with the same set of problems in that moment in their life have had different lives that have led them to that point. How they deal with them is going to be determined as much by the life they've had as it is by the way that the life they've had has affected them. Imagine a white person in a predominantly white society that's homeless. Okay, so they're part of a racial majority there, and they're still struggling. They're homeless, they're dealing with some real issues in quite a substantial way, okay? Now make them part of a racial minority. So make them black or make them Latino. And that begins to get harder in ways that I couldn't even imagine as a white person raised in the UK. I just can't even fathom some of the ways that that would be difficult. Now, make them queer. I think about people like that, and then I think about the rich people, right? And I've heard the argument, well, rich people can be good because they can do good in the world. And I think, well, you know, at least they're trying to do good. But then I think, good by whose standard? And good for who? You give free roam to someone with that kind of money, and sooner or later you end up in like a Lawrence Hatfield situation. Like, it's okay if I do this morally questionable thing because of my good ethics, right? It's okay if I do the thing that sci-fi films have literally been warning us about for decades, because I'm going to do it in a good way. Who looks at those films and goes, looks like a good idea, might do that? And who the read 1984 and then went, sounds like a plan? I mean, I guess that whoever figured out a way to make it profitable, I guess. I mean, let's be fair, that's the society that we're living in, isn't it? People taking liberties because the ends justify the means, and, well, they're too much of a good person to use it in the wrong way, is all well and good until they use it in the wrong way. I think about the left-right divide on taxation policies, and I think, well, maybe it is a good idea to like tax people who have more money higher, because then more of their money's coming back and everybody's benefiting from it. Like, that's good for everyone, right? And to that, I've heard, well, if you do that, then you shackle their ability to do good in the world, which lands me right back at the Tony Robbins quote that I shared at the beginning of the video. It's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness. And I think, well, how about then we tax them properly and we'll see how resourceful they really are. How about that? Let's give that one a try, shall we? Because if you're going against higher taxation in one breath, and then in the next you're talking about how resourcefulness is really the issue, then you start to look a little bit like a hypocrite. Although I guess you could say, well, I'm using my resourcefulness to try to avoid people getting taxed a decent amount when they have lots of money. I think the trouble is we're defining success around how much stuff or money a person has, and the well-being of a country around the strength of its economy. And we've got all these models reliant on the unquestionable and well-guarded assertion that endless growth is a good thing. All the while, we've got our collective head in the sand with regards to our shared sentiments on things like climate change, which really isn't a secondary issue anymore, although, well, it wasn't before our current global predicament presented itself, but it hasn't gone away, it hasn't gone anywhere. Like, we're seeing things maybe slightly improving in that regard, which shows it can be done, and it's really us that's causing a problem, right? But honestly, the problem's not going away. And if we just go back to normal after this, it's just going to get worse again. Can we just take a second and recognize the way the planet has changed since this whole lockdown thing has started? And maybe we can just take this opportunity to not make it worse again. And this predicament has also highlighted, I think, the already glaring disparities between the values and the priorities of the average person, especially those who are part of the growing class of the working poor, and the values and priorities of people rich enough to not experience the real impact of the necessary changes that each and every one of us are required to make in our lives right now. I think it's time that we looked at our priorities as individuals and as a society. I think it's time that we started calling moral bankruptcy by its name. And I think it's time that we stop looking at vulnerable people, at poorer people, at homeless people as other than ourselves. I think it's time that those with the means to do more, to benefit others, to help others, do so. And stop like calling on the poorer people to do it. Like, there's this whole Robin Hood thing that I tweeted about, right? It annoyed me because it's rich people putting on a show to get poor people to donate to people who are struggling in New York, and they're calling it Robin Hood, right? But that's not taken from the rich to give to the poor. That's taken from the moderately struggling or average income people to give to the poorer people, right? That's not the real Robin Hood. Would be for the people who are deciding to donate money to in some way manage to get the money from the rich people who are doing this whole song and dance and moral grandstanding, give it to the really vulnerable people. I think it's time for those who have the means to do more, to benefit others, do more. I think it's time for those who can live without relying on people who view their employees as disposable to do so, if at all possible. We've created this kind of convenience culture wherein it's easier to let convenience override our, I guess, sense of perspective on the consequences of doing the thing we're doing. And I know we're not perfect. None of us are perfect in that regard, but I still think that's a true statement, you know. I think it's about checking in with ourselves, and instead of falling prey to moral outrage, instead evaluating our own ethical landscapes, and as much as possible, whenever possible, acting in a way that is in integrity with whatever form kindness, skepticism, whatever we see as being virtues, take in our life. I know we're not perfect, right? We're not all perfect, but I feel like we've got to do something, because if we're not careful, Elon Musk and Grimes are going to fuck off to Mars and make every sci-fi film a reality and take all their rich friends with them and an adequately populated class, you know, minimum viable class. And then we've lost our captive audience, haven't we? I don't know, I think I'm just annoyed about that Imagine video still. Videos like this are made possible by my wonderful patrons whose names you will see listed at the end of the video. If you like the video you watched today and you want to help support the channel, the best way to do that is through Patreon. There's a link in the description and also in the live chat. Otherwise, please like the video, stick a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, hit the bell to get notified whenever I upload a video. That is a lot of calls to action. Pick one, just do it. Thanks for watching, and before you go, let me just say one last thing. Please, be kind and ask good questions. And I'll see you in the next one.